So I think I'll tell you what I've learned over the last year. I've traveled to about 160 cities since last January with my wife, Tammy, and spoken to about 300,000 people at live events. And so the first thing I learned was that for some reason I can travel to 160 cities and speak to 300,000 people. And that was a shock in itself, that it's a continual shock that everywhere we go, there's a massive hunger for whatever it is that I happen to be talking about. And, you know, I think about that constantly when I'm discussing what I'm discussing with my audiences, trying to understand what it is that's driving this. I do that a variety of ways. You know, one of the things I do is listen for silence. If you have 3,500 people in an auditorium and they all fall dead silent, what that means is that you've touched on something that's of universal importance in that moment anyways, because it supersedes, the topic supersedes anything else that's being considered, right? It supersedes the desire to shift your position in your chair. It supersedes the desire to whisper to your neighbor. It grips your attention completely and forces a silence. And it's a very interesting thing to listen for that, because you see that people are in the grip of something. And then you have to puzzle out what it is that they're in the grip of. I can tell you some about that. You know, there's this idea that became very popular in the 1960s. I just talked to Bishop Barron, about a week and a half ago for my YouTube video channel and for my podcast. And I told him that I was a strange psychologist because I never told my audiences that, and I always speak to individuals in the audience, I never tell someone that they're okay the way they are. You know, there's this idea that came up in the 60s that you're okay the way you are. Well, I like that idea very much. And I think it's a very bad idea, especially when you're talking to young people who are lost and nihilistic and depressed and suffering and aimless and ideologically possessed and prematurely cynical. Because they're not okay the way they are. And if you tell them that they are, then they think, well, this is it, that's life. It's like I've hit the pinnacle at 18. I don't know anything about the world. I haven't contributed anything to it. But there's no up because I'm okay the way they are, the way I am. It's like, you're not okay the way you are, especially if you're 18. You've got 60 years to put yourself together, and you better be better at the end of that than you were at the beginning, or something has gone seriously wrong. And so it's not an optimistic thing to tell people that they're okay the way they are. It's a pessimistic thing, because what you do is denigrate what they could be for what they are. And I know that is a terrible idea, technically speaking, from a psychological perspective, because it's who you could be that imbues your life with meaning. It's not the only thing. I mean, you have your friends and your family, but they expect something from you too, you know? They expect the best from you. They expect a certain amount of improvement, especially if you have children. But even if you are a child, you might expect some improvement from your parents as well. But that's what you hope for, is you hope that the person can manifest what's best in them. And if they don't do that, then you're disappointed in them, just like you would be inexorably or are inexorably disappointed in yourself if you don't manifest what's best in you. And I think that that's very interesting moral law. You know,